Now we're gonna focus on this damage on the rear bumper. There's a few things going on here. This top one is the most concerning. When I rub my finger on it, I can feel a little bit of a divot. We're gonna use the TouchUpDirect spot putty on this. That will fill this hole. We'll sand it smooth, and then we'll touch up that and these surrounding scratches. The first step, because we're gonna be sanding, is to tape this off in a way that makes it so we don't damage any of the original finish when we're doing the sanding. This first procedure, this taping, is really just for the putty so that we minimize the potential for sanding scratches. Doesn't need to be perfect. You don't have to tape out exactly around this hole. What we're gonna do is take 400 to 500 grit sandpaper and smooth this out ever so slightly. This will help the putty adhere to the scratch. Doesn't need to be perfectly smooth. You don't have to go crazy here. The putty itself will make it so that it smooths out the divot. Okay, we're gonna clean this out a little bit with the wax and grease wipe, just to make sure we don't have anything in there after it's been sanded. Now I'm gonna take the TouchUpDirect putty. We sell this very handy little size, and just apply some on there. Don't worry about it looking pretty. Just get it on there. Fill that divot, smooth it out as best you can, and you'll be able to see how it's filling that divot in there. Obviously, don't worry about if it gets on the tape, it doesn't matter. What we're gonna do is we're gonna let that dry, then we're gonna sand it lightly before we remove the tape. Okay, now that the putty is dried, I'm gonna take 500 sandpaper. I'm using wet sanding, the wet sanding technique. Maybe makes it a little bit smoother, but it can be dry sanded as well. But the goal here is to smooth out this area where the putty is and remove the excess putty. It will slowly sand down till it's gone. After we sanded the putty smooth, we're gonna remove the tape because the tape makes it hard to sand it completely smooth. Now we're gonna continue wet sanding. I'm gonna move to 1500 grit sandpaper because I want to not damage the area around the putty area. This is a matter of taking wet or dry sandpaper, which is what we have here, dipping it in a cup of water and just lightly sanding. You'll see the putty start to slowly disappear, the hard corners of the putty, and all that'll be left is where we want it to be in the actual damaged area. In this case, because of the sanding, it did scuff up the paint around the damaged area a little bit, but we'll be able to polish that out a little bit later on in the process after we put the paint on the actual scratch. Also going to slightly smooth out this other scratch because it's kind of rough. So we're just gonna sand that down a little bit. Again, same technique with the sandpaper. Okay, now that we've done the putty, the scratch is nice and smooth. There's very little feel of the divot that was there. It was pretty deep. The putty fills that in. But because we use a putty, now we have to apply some primer. So in this case, I'm only going to use the primer on the areas where the putty was. We'll do a couple coats of that. Maybe smooth it out with some wet sanding and apply the color. Okay, now we've applied primer, I'm gonna go back to wet sanding. Again, just dipping my sandpaper into this cup of water. It can be any type of cup, doesn't matter. Wet or dry sandpaper. And I switched to 2000 because I wanna really go easy on this. And I wanna just focus on the areas where there's primer. And I'm just trying to knock the edges off, make it nice and smooth. Don't want to go outside of the lines too much, outside of where the primer is. Otherwise, it'll scuff the paint on the card. Even though with 2000, you can bring the finish back. It's not a big danger. Still, we want to be very careful. and you can see what's going on here. The primer is getting smoother. That divot now is completely filled in. And we have a little scuffing around the edge here, but that'll all come out with our polishing compound. Okay, the primer is dry, the putty's dry. We're in good shape with all this. If you see a little bit of sand marks on the outside of the scratch, don't panic. It's just the 1500 sandpaper. You can get the gloss back with the polishing compound. And you can even see where it's wet, how it's doing that. And we are ready to add color. Now we have multiple scratches here, as we mentioned earlier. I'm just gonna focus on getting the color onto everything that's primered. I'm using the brush again because it's a little bit of a larger spot. If it was any smaller than this, I would use the TouchUp pen. Waterborne paint always looks like a different color on the first coat. As long as you verified your color code and checked your color before you applied it, you're fine. It dries much different. Okay, first coat, we're gonna let that dry and come back to it and add another 2 or 3 coats. Okay, with waterborne paint, it's important to remember that if you goof up a little bit, it's no big deal, and you want to sand it a little bit, you can do that, but you cannot wet sand it. It's going to completely remove it because it's based in water. So in this case, I just want to smooth this out a little bit, and after I do that, I'm simply going to add another coat of color. Doesn't hurt anything, it is the proper procedure. Then you're right back where you started from. 2 or 3 coats of color, let it dry, and then you're ready for the clear coat. Okay, we've applied 3 coats of the color. Another important thing to remember with waterborne paint is it does not dry glossy. So if you're looking at the scratch after you've applied the color and it looks matte, it's because it is. The gloss comes with the clear coat. I'm gonna apply 2 to 3 coats of clear. Again, do not worry about the white sanding marks around the edge of the scratch. That's all going to be removed with the polishing compound. We're going to let this dry, add a couple coats, and then polish it. Okay, the clear coat's dried for 24 hours. We're going to take our polishing compound and just slightly work the area. This will also smooth out any bumps or imperfections in the clear coat, but really the goal here is to get rid of that haze, the sanding haze that was around where we applied the putty. You do want to make sure it's good and dry, waiting 24 hours so that the clear coat is dried and hardened. And you can work this as long as you like till it's to your satisfaction. In this case, I still got a little bit of haze there, so I'm going to continue with it. You can use the compound very liberally too. The more you use, the more grit there's there, and the more it'll smooth things out. After it's been thoroughly polished, you can wipe it down and you can wax the scratch at this point and you're good to go.